In light of Obsidian Entertainment's recently released game Avowed, I thought it'd be interesting to investigate the rising tide of Oblivion-likes. Bethesda's legacy in the Elder Scrolls is rooted in its massively popular game Skyrim, but before Skyrim, there was Oblivion. On Tactically Sound, Matt and I went back and played Oblivion, really for the first time for both of us. And now I can't help but see its influence in modern gaming.
So let's answer the first question. What is an Oblivion-like?
I consider Oblivion-likes to be open world fantasy RPGs with an emphasis on action, combat, and free roaming exploration.
To me, Oblivion is both medieval and token inspired. And as the fourth Elder Scrolls title, the game was developed at the height of the Lord of the Rings craze. Its world was heavily inspired by the Peter Jackson films. Todd Howard also had the desire to go after a more classic fairy tale world.
Oblivion feels less alien than Morrowind, and it's more lush and green than the Viking-inspired snow-capped mountains of Skyrim. Typically with big AAA releases, development teams will look towards their technology to find inspiration for new gameplay mechanics, and also to create more immersion for gamers. In the case of Oblivion, Bethesda's Radiant AI systems were on full display, and their tree technology allowed for a richer, greener world. You're basically going from Dunes Arrakis in Morrowind to a Shire-like world of Cyrodiil in Oblivion.
Beyond Avowed, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has been making waves as the genre-defining fantasy RPG of this generation. There's no doubt that KCD2 has the critics and fans excited about the immersion, tactical combat, and storytelling displayed by Warhorse Studios.
I think this concept of Oblivion-likes are interesting because the game dates back to the Xbox 360 era, where traditionally I think of grimdark or retrofuturistic or even sci-fi titles like Gears of War, Fallout 3, and BioShock. Yet at the same time, you did have games like Kingdoms of Amalur taking a stab at that vibrant fantasy genre. You also had Rockstar tackling the open world Western setting of Red Dead Redemption 1. Oblivion is more than just a proto Skyrim. It's got this unique feel and tone, and I think developers are going back and finding new ways to iterate on its legacy.
So Spencer, you were texting me last night that you were downloading Avowed, you wanted to play some, you've been playing it a little bit tonight, a little bit this morning, you're really just starting out. But I got some questions for you because, I'm a little on the fence. Should I be downloading this? I'm feeling a little bit like Starfield all over again. So you ready?
Yeah, no, I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. How does the game communicate and hook you into its lore, its fantasy compared to other games like Skyrim? In Skyrim, I'm thinking of, you got, when you're coming down on the wagon, you're already being, told you're thrown into this civil war. You're a prisoner of war, and then the dragon comes in. So you're already like getting hyped up and fed and immersed into this world. How does Avowed do this well for you?
Yeah, when you asked this, I was like, ooh, that's a really good question. Because I think probably, you had mentioned to me, like, I've heard that the game is kind of meh. And I think where that seems to come from is the intro. I think because I've played the Outer Worlds, when the Outer Worlds started out, and I was like, they kind of start you in these like tunnels that feel very linear, that feel very like dungeon crawlery, like you're on rails. And I think that something like Skyrim's opening feels very cinematic and open. So I think Obsidian moving forward needs to learn how to do those intros, like those cinematic, memorable openings to like knock that part out of the park, because it's a slow start. And I've heard other reviewers say that. For me, it reminds me of so the opening reminds me of Larian's Divinity Original Sin 2 and even Original Sin 1, where it's more of a tutorial, and even the setting reminds me of both of those games, where it's kind of like beachy, tropical. It's kind of, it is lush, like we were saying with like an Oblivion thing, where it feels like a fairy tale. It's got nice water textures. And so you're more hooked in to that cozy Dungeons and Dragons style traditional fantasy Whereas, Skyrim starts you off with this really dark kind of setting and this really aggressive beginning. So I liken it more to a Harry Potter meets Oblivion style game. Even Oblivion's hook, I think, is probably stronger right out the gate. But the setting and the world and the way that you feel as the character role-playing is much more like you're a Harry Potter character or an Oblivion character.
Okay. And while we're still talking about, comparing this game to Skyrim, you mentioned to me already, like, I'm feeling like Harry Potter. Like, is this game pointing you into like a Harry Potter character build or a stealth archer build like Skyrim? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think it's improved the combat since the Outer Worlds for sure. It's pretty arcadey. And I think that the magic is by far the best part about it. And I've only gained access to like the rifle, the sword, the dagger, the shield, the wand, and the grimoire. But what's cool is everyone gets powers. So like right away, you're given like a perk, and you could do like the ranger perk, or you could do the warrior perk, or you could do, and so in that way, it's kind of like Diablo, where it's like the classes are very distinct, but everyone gets their own power per level. So at first I chose the warrior version, which was like a charge. And then I saw that there was like a menu system where it showed the other classes. And I was like, well, I want to play as a wizard. So I went over to like the wizard option, and it gave me magical missiles, which are like these orbs that like heat seek, like target the enemy.
Right. That's cool.
And then right after that, I found the grimoire, which the grimoire is like its own radial weapon. So it has like lightning, fire, something else. I don't know if it's a buff. And then it has shock, and it has freeze. So like you can freeze the enemy and then light them on fire, all with just one hand. Because on the other hand, you have your wand that's casting like missiles. So, and then you can press, so you can press Y and switch to your secondary loadout, which could be like a sword and a shield, or a bow and an arrow, or a rifle. So it feels much more combat infused than I would say the Outer Worlds did. Because when you're casting, it kind of feels like you're in Castlevania, where they're like, she's like shouting these like incantations with the book, and like, and like all this stuff is happening.
Yep.
So I feel like in a way that gets understated how fun that is. But I just think that's kind of Obsidian's curse right now, is like they're in the shadow of Bethesda and the shadow of Larian and the shadow of CD Projekt Red. So people like don't know what to do with them. It's like, how do you pitch this game? And to me, it's a Dungeons and Dragons fantasy with an Oblivion-like world, and it's a chill, cozy fantasy RPG. It's not incredibly difficult. It's not incredibly deep. It's more of like a palate cleanser game that you play. Like coming from Cyberpunk to this, it's like, oh, wow, this is cool. This is a good game to cycle between Cyberpunk, because Cyberpunk feels like the grown-up version of this. And this feels more like accessible. And sometimes you want that. Like you want that, I'm just going to chill and enjoy the story and explore the world and find loot kind of feeling. And this does that really well so far.
Sometimes you want a game to just hold you over till the next game, but it's still entertaining. It sounds like that's what Avowed's, racking up to be. And one of the cool things that I noticed, like when I was watching some gameplay and just hearing news about the game, is I always thought this game was going to only be in first person, but now I've been seeing that they added third person. Have you tried third person yet? Or are you just sticking with first person? Yeah.
So I think that what Obsidian doesn't get enough credit for is their armor designs and their character creation. Like I was able to make a Harry Potter looking character right away. I used a preset. I just switched a couple things. Everyone looks good. It doesn't have that like Bethesda, everyone's ugly kind of character creator where you're just making these horrific looking humans. But they all look very expressive, and they all have their own kind of appeal. And so I was just like, I'm not going to mess with it too much. I'm just going to go for like a Hermione type character. And so that was cool. And then the armor is sick too, because it's like you get these cool robes. And I think it feels very PlayStation 3 meets Xbox 360 in its like game world. It reminds me of Castlevania's God of War style series, Shadow of War, or I forget what it's called, but it has that kind of like Darksiders, kind of like that Kingdoms of Amular style, like World of Warcraft in a way style armor, where it's very fantasy but also kind of bright, and I think they do a good job of like maturing that look and making it feel fashionable, and you're excited to put clothes on, which I think is always really important. And I think the Outer Worlds also did that really well, where sometimes it'd be hard to pick what I want to wear because it'd be like, I don't know, these all these armor sets look really cool and really unique. So I think that's something that Obsidian does really well, is their armor and their clothes and their fabrics and stuff.
It's keeping on, talking about characters and design. I was curious, like, how do you feel like the character customization compares to the customization in the Outer Worlds? This is something I have always loved about video games, is making my own character, the role play experience in the very beginning.
Yeah, I think it feels a little bit like a storybook, which is also kind of how the Outer Worlds felt, where they do that thing with the character dialogue where it's constantly reminding you of your strengths and your weaknesses. So it'll say something like, oh, do you want to express strength or dexterity, or do you want to, like, because you're an arcane magic user, you can, or an academic, I forget what it's called, like an arcane academic or something, you could kind of be more smart and snarky, and so it'll put those in like parentheses and then tell you how many points you have, and so you can kind of spec out your character towards the type of dialogue role playing you want to do. So you might, when I played the Outer Worlds, I remember seeing science a lot, and I never choose science, but I was like, ooh, I wish I could have said that. So next time I RPG like level up, I'm gonna put more points in science. So in my dialogue options, when I'm confronted with a quest kind of like choice and consequence moment, I can like bend the storyline to my will by having a lot of points in like science and technology. And so what I've been doing is prioritizing anything that's like academic, and then also prioritizing any choice that has an action with it. So if it'll say like laugh or scoff or point or lie, I do that. So there's always some kind of like flavor text to the choice that I'm making to try and get like the most out of the interaction. So I would say it's not totally open-ended. It feels like there's all of these different types of archetypes that you could play as and mix and match. And I think so far it's the most fun to kind of like role play your level progression with your skills as you are with the dialogue. Like, it's cool that it feels like they match up. It's like, as I'm putting more points into my arcane academic magic, I could also speak in that way as well.
All right. And thank you so much for like giving me like all your inside scoop on just like your first impressions, because I've been following what's been being said in the gamer community, and it's been really putting me on the fence. I was kind of hyped about this game, and after listening to you, you always give me a real authentic perspective and experience, and I know we have similar tastes in things, so I think I might try this one out. But I got one last question for you, Spencer. You have always expressed to me how much you love the Outer Worlds. You have a lot of great content. If you guys have not seen any of the Yeti Den's content on the Outer Worlds, you guys should go definitely check it out. He has a lot of cool insights. I want to ask, do you think are you going to be playing this one as much as the Outer Worlds?
Yeah, so I've heard that this game isn't even as good as the Pillars of Eternity games, which are right before it. So I think I'm going to play the Pillars games as I'm playing Avowed, because Avowed has this really cool lore dictionary thing. It reminds me a little bit of Unicorn Overlord, where you can you just have this massive dictionary and all that stuff. So I would also say it reminds me of Unicorn Overlord. It's a lot like that. Like, it's kind of like a first person Unicorn Overlord style game, where it's like, it's dark, has dark themes. It can surprise you with how dark it gets, but it's mostly a fairy tale, like fantasy, kind of like good versus bad kind of feeling thing. But yeah, so I think it will be cool, because I've been really liking isometric games, and I'm trying to figure out if I want to play Pillars 1 on the Xbox or on the Switch or on PC. But I think it'll be cool as a hook into that world that's really well received. So I think it's already coming in strong because it's elevating the previous entries of like Pillars of Eternity 1 and then Pillars of Eternity 2. I think it's called Deadfire. So in that way, I think, yeah, it's like the Outer Worlds where it's like a big universe that you can get into and learn more about. And there's multiple games, which is cool.
Right, which that's kind of neat. Like, you know, I don't really know anything about Pillars of Eternity. You know, this could be that good gateway for a lot of people into learning more about that lore. And then, you know, because a lot of people lean more towards this style of gameplay and an experience versus that tabletop, you know, Baldur's Gate 3 sort of experience. And, you know, this might get them hooked enough into the lore to try out those other games.
Well, we'll leave it there for today. That's our Rising Tide of Oblivion-likes. We barely scratched the surface of this topic. Like I said, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 with the menus, the UI, there's so many elements of that game that call back to Oblivion, but we wanted to focus on Avowed because that's the one that I played. So yeah, tell us what other games you think have been influenced by Oblivion lately. And if you're playing Avowed, let us know in the comments. And Matt, where can people follow along with the Jumby Jumbwa experience?
You can follow me at Jumby Jumbwa on Instagram or YouTube. JUMBYJUMBWA. I'll see you guys over there.
Yeah, and you guys are already here on the Eddie Den where we host Tactically Sound. So if you guys like this show, subscribe, leave a comment, and we will see you guys next time. Later. Bye.
Peace.
Yeah.